You're listening to dialectradio.co.uk, your local community radio run by volunteers. Log on to our website at dialectradio.co.uk to find out more.
My name is Fogarty. I was born in Chicago of Irish immigrant parents. I returned to Ireland after the Second World War, 1946, and bought a little farm in County Roscommon where I lived there for the next 8 years. My father eventually lived out the rest of his life and died there. Oddly to say that when he died in the year 2000, my father could truthfully say his father was born 161 years ago. That was before. That was quite a long. His father was 65 when he was born, and my father lived to be 97 years. So I came to the States, was a house builder, became a civil engineer, worked throughout Central and South America, and also Borneo. Was a draftee into the U.S. Army, served in the occupation army of France. My wife and I have done a great deal of anti-war effort. We've been very, very busy and have run into quite a bit of difficulty, partly because of this attempt that I first made of these mass graves of Ireland, and got maybe 900,000 copies out there. Now,
look, I mean, most people have heard about the famines around the mid 19th century, 1845, 1850. But what you're saying is that actually there are mass graves. Is that true?
Yes, Ireland is dotted with mass graves. They're typically about a mile and a half apart. But my book has a map that shows the locations of 180 of the larger mass graves. There are typically a few thousand in each of the 180 mass graves that I point out.
Now, your book, I mean, you talk about the Irish Holocaust. What's the title of your book?
The title of the book is Ireland 1845-1850, The Perfect Holocaust, and Who Kept It, quote, perfect, unquote.
Okay. Now, this is a very strong word to use, Holocaust, because people will say, well, you're comparing it with the Nazi Holocaust. How many people died?
About 5.2 million. The author of the chapter 6 of the book is a man in England who has done quite a bit of census work, and he says that there's more likely something close to 6 million. Who were murdered in those years.
Now, you say murdered. You say murdered, yes. But what we hear is that actually it was the failure of the potato crop due to blight.
That's what we all believed. That's what I believed until I was middle-aged. That's what we were all taught in school on both sides of the Atlantic. That's what we were taught, potato famine. But while doing my grandfather's biography, I found that the regiment that he joined, the 40th of Foot, the Duke of Somerset, had removed the food from South County Galway during the so-called famine. That shocked me because I had always believed it was what we were told, that it was a famine. So I researched further, and I found that more than half the British Army had been deployed into Ireland in those years, and their only task, their only function in Ireland was removing the abundant food crops from Ireland.
So why was that? Why were they doing that?
That's something I do not know. All I know are the basic facts, which regiment entered what area and what date they departed. Well, first of all, the date they arrived into Ireland and the date they departed Ireland, and the dates they moved around while in Ireland. All of that is in my book. And also the volume of food that they removed to the ports for export. And the escort ships that escorted the ships to wherever they went. And the Coast Guard that guarded the coast of Ireland from anyone who would interfere with the food removal. And what else?
So the soldiers were actually there to protect the food? In other words, that there was a possibility that Irish people might try and steal that food.
Yes, there was no army of English harvesters working in Ireland. All those crops were created by, sown by, weeded and grown by the Irish and harvested by the Irish. But at that time, Ireland was run by English landlords in Ireland. All of the land, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, 97% of the land of Ireland land was owned by English landlords. They were all moved out. They were all bought out by the British government, and their land was distributed to the Irish people. The land of Ireland now is among Europe's best distributed. But until 1900 to 1920, in those years are the years in which the English landlords were moved out of Ireland and back to England. While they were there, the genocide continued. The eviction, the destruction of the Irish continued as long as those landlords were in Ireland.
Around about the same time, you've got a lot of Irish migration to North America, haven't you? I imagine that's not a coincidence.
Yes. The immigration to North America has been going on for a very long time before that, before and after the U.S. Revolution of 1776. A lot of food was sent over, and a huge amount of money was sent over to pay the rent to the families of the Irish, to their English landlords at the time. The rent payment for the use of land in Ireland was typically more than what could be earned off the land. And it's a shocking piece of work. By the way, it's also important to say that a certain percentage, a large minority percentage of those British regiments in Ireland were Irish soldiers. So there are bloody heads also to be shared among the Irish. My own grandfather helped the British to do to the Maoris in New Zealand and the Aborigines in Australia and to the Indians in the Indian subcontinent, the Bangladeshis and others, what had been done to his own parents in Ireland. Lord Ashbrook of Castle Durrow in Durrow, County Laois, Lord Ashbrook, he evicted my great-grandparents and my granduncles and grandaunt in 1836, before my grandfather was born. My grandfather was born in the shadow of Lord Ashbrook's gallows on Gallows Hill, uphill of the gates to the castle of Castle Durrow, County Laois. That was the seventh Lord Ashbrook at the time, the fifth, sixth, and seventh at the time. The current Lord Ashbrook, the 11th, is living in Arley Hall, Cheshire, England today. So they keep going. I don't know how he's earning his money, but he has a multi-thousand-acre estate yet in Cheshire, the current Lord Ashbrook.
I mean, what you're describing, the nearly 6 million Irish that died in this, what isn't really, you're describing not as a famine, but as a deliberate starvation. What was the purpose?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you again, what was the purpose of starving all these people?
Well, I don't know the purpose, but one spokesman for the British government said, with a certain degree of satisfaction, obviously, the way it's written, that the Celts will soon be as scarce on the banks of the Shannon River, as the red man is on the banks of the Manhattan.
Okay, so they're talking about really comparing the Irish people to the Red Indians and the Native Americans.
Yes, it was intended to be a complete wipeout, evidently.
What about the Irish government? What have they been doing about this history? Because have they acknowledged the truth of the mass graves, for example?
Yeah, it's shocking. I wish, in a certain sense, that I had died before I learned this. It puts one into a permanent grief. It's a little bit like the concern so many of us have for the Palestinians. It's a constant sense of grief, of mourning, and maybe particularly because the people, when they were murdered, they were first murdered, and then they were slandered in death for the next 170 years. That's unbearable to me. That's why when my wife and I put up a memorial over one of those mass graves, we feel a tremendous relief.
What about the Irish government? What are they doing?
The Irish government are the main opponents to what we're doing. They slur us, they slander us also now. They would like to imprison us. They would like to get us into trouble. The RTE, Radio Television, the state monopoly of broadcasting in Ireland, I was interviewed by the most popular, it's my understanding, the most popular radio announcer interview in Ireland, Joe Duffy, on Radio 1 of RTE Ireland. And he accused me of putting a memorial up over a mass grave. He set me up for ridicule and questioned whether I had the right to do it, even though the local people were the ones who were asking me, but they're too afraid to do so. The people in RD outside, he was referring to one mass grave headstone in particular in Smarmore, RD, County Louth. And the people of RD had been going there on pilgrimages for the last 170 years. Most of them Catholics, I suppose, because they would go there to say prayers for the souls of those who were murdered and buried there. And in a mass grave that no one ever marked as a mass grave, though it takes up the northern half of the cemetery. The entire northern half is taken up by people who were buried in cartloads from the workhouse in RD, County Louth.
So how did these people die? I mean, did these people just simply die of famine, or were some of them deliberately killed?
Very, very few were murdered in the sense of being shot through the heart or bayoneted or something. There was some of them, but very little. They were mostly all died of starvation or of the diseases attendant upon malnutrition. When the food was removed, they soon became hungry, and everything then went bad.
Okay, and over the space of 5 years or so, how many people are buried in the typical mass grave? And were the mass graves open for several years or for periods of time?
They're there. They're generally overgrown, typically with no marker of any kind. Some do. Some have markers, but the markers tend to be, they say, typically famine grave. And of the 6 memorials that my wife and I have put up, only one of them had ever any kind of a marker on it of the people there. And yet everyone knows where these mass graves are. They still whisper about them, but they don't tell their children much. It all comes by, it's very, very sotto voce. They keep it's very sub rosa. They don't mention it much. And yet we all learn about it in time. But the mass graves are there. The local people all know where their own mass grave is. And the Irish government is absolutely opposed to anyone learning about them.
Why is that?
I find it hard to believe. I do not understand. Ireland must be the only nation on earth, the only one I've ever heard of, that conceals the genocide of their own people. I don't get it. I do not understand it.
I mean, is it because this is a bit of history which is too difficult to deal with?
No, I'm afraid it's more vicious than that. I'm afraid that they are either being blackmailed or bribed into acquiescence.
How many graves are there again? Where are they? And how many people buried?
My map shows the location, the precise locations of 180 of them. They're scattered throughout the country. But they're, according to, of the 6 mass graves that my wife and I put up, only one of those mass graves shows on my map. They were brought to my attention later. So I'm thinking that there are probably about 3,000 mass graves in what can be called mass graves in Ireland.
And so what source material have you used to get your facts?
Mostly coming from people the first one came to me to ask me if a certain pamphlet was mine, and I said yes. Well, he said, there's something I want to show you. This is in Ballymo, County Galway. So I visited him the next day, and he showed me a mass grave that his father and gang had found in 1910 when they were putting up fences to divide the land from the old English landlord to the Irish recipient. And he brought me to the mass grave. He didn't have the exact spot. Finally, the exact spot was determined by the owner of the land, who had to. They never plowed that land after the first year there when it was given back to the Irish, and he hit bodies. He hit masses of bodies, plowing the land nearest to his bog. He never plowed. There were so many bodies that he stopped to plow, never plowed that field again. That's one mass grave, and we put up a memorial over it. Well, first of all, we put it up over where the entire village had been wiped out, where the village once stood. And then the following year, we learned the precise location from the children of the owner who had to stop plowing because the mass grave was at a specific location in a certain field. That field was left unplowed ever since, and has never been plowed to this day.
So has there ever been a map? Has there ever been a map made of where these mass graves were? And have you discovered any maps that were made at the time?
No, there are no maps. They were buried, and the people who buried them, many were hoped that the people would never remember. They were all Catholic Irish, but they were typically buried outside consecrated ground, outside the wall of the local cemetery. They were not considered to have a future life. There was no eternal life for them. They had no souls, according to their own people in control of the situation. They were not given Christian burials. They were buried they were dumped in pits outside the consecrated ground, outside the wall of the so-called holy ground.
Okay, and how many of these mass graves have you been able to confirm exist?
You mean how many have we been able to monument?
How many have you managed to confirm that there is a mass grave there?
Well, I want the 180 on the map, and another 187. And then in my book, as people come to me and point out the areas, they typically have the name like Pauper's Ground. They all know what they are. They call them famine graves. So I might have another 30 in my book that I've added that are not on the map. So maybe 210.
Tell us about your book and where people can find out more about this.
Again, the title of the book is Ireland, 1845-1850, The Perfect Holocaust, and Who Kept It, quote, perfect, unquote. It's available in Ireland from a John Robinson. I can give you his telephone number. I'll have to dig it up. Or he can be emailed. Maybe better yet, he can be emailed at 1 second now. I must say, I'm determined, because all of the so-called famine writers all work for profit. I am determined that I will make no profit from this book. My wife and I have been putting up mass grave memorials since before I even thought of doing a book. I thought my pamphlets would silence the liars, but it didn't. So then I went to, when the internet came out, I put it on the internet, and I thought the internet would silence them. It did force the famine writers to abandon about 90% of their lies, but they've had to adopt a new lie to accommodate the tremendous volume of food that was being shipped out of Ireland at the time. That can no longer be denied.
I mean, give us an idea of how much food was being shipped out at the time.
Well, I'll go to my book and just take a second to dig it out. 1 second, please. I also have which regiment was where at which time. One second now.
I just want the quantity of food, because that gives people an idea of how much food was leaving the country.
Yes. What I've used for that is just three. The British papers are full of it at the time. You see, there's no need to dwell on it too much. Here's one sample. On July 28, 1848, when perhaps half of the Holocaust victims had already expired, the Limerick Intelligencer, a reporter of shipping news, recorded a typical day's food shipments from only the following four ports: from Limerick, the Anne, John Guise, and Messenger for London, the Pelton Clinton for Liverpool, and the city of Limerick, British Queen, and Cambrian Maid for Glasgow. This one-day removal of Limerick food was of 863 firkins of butter, 212 firkins, 1,198 casks, and 200 kegs of lard, 87 casks of ham, 267 bales of bacon, 52 barrels of pork, 45 tons and 628 barrels of flour, 4,975 barrels of oats, and 1,000 of pork, 45 tons and 628 barrels of flour, 4,975 barrels of oats, and 1,000 barrels of barley. From Kilrush, that's in County Clare, the Ellen for Bristol, the Charles G. Fryer, and Mary Elliott for London. This one-day removal was of 550 tons of County Clare oats and 15 tons of its barley. From Tralee, that's in County Kerry, the John St. Barb, Claudia, and Queen for London, the spokesman for Liverpool. This one-day removal was of 711 tons of Kerry oats and 118 tons of its barley. From Galway, the Mary, Victoria, and Diligence for London, the Swan and Union for Limerick for transshipment to England. This one-day removal was of 60 sacks of County Galway flour, 30 sacks and 292 tons of its oatmeal, 294 tons of its oats, and 140 tons of its miscellaneous provisions, edibles. British soldiers forcibly removed it from its starving Limerick, Clare, Kerry, and Galway producers.
Okay, what year was that?
That was on July 28, 1848.
Amazing. That's really the height. That's the height of the famine, really.
It's actually a little bit beyond, a little bit toward the tapering down end. 1847 was nearly half the people died in 1 year, 1847.
And is there any reliable estimate of the number of people that died altogether?
About 5.2 million. But here's from the Times. The people might not want to believe the Limerick Intelligencer. The Times of London, November 5th, 1846. Irish produce. The importation of provisions from the Irish ports into the port of Liverpool during the week from the 6th to the 22nd ultimo, inclusively, comprised the following list of articles. These 14,106 firkins, 285 half firkins, 1,512 baskets and casks, 258 boxes of butter, 8,665 barrels, 571 sacks, and 225 quarters of wheat, 1,960 sacks of flour, 61 tons weight, and 700 quarters. A quarter is a quarter ton of oats, 922 sacks, and 735 other packages of oatmeal. It goes down and on.
Can you give us an idea of what your experience was actually in Ireland, putting a memorial on these mass graves?
Yes. The local people are very relieved. They have been coming to me to see if I could do something that they are afraid to do. Once we put up the first one, that's 4 other people came to us. In fact, they were in attendance at that consecration inauguration outside Ballymore, County Galway, when we put up the first one. Again, groups from 4 other mass grave locations, they begged us to try and do the same thing for their mass grave. It took me until last year to get one of them done, and 2 of them were completely blocked from me. The people became terrorized, and they completely gave up any further drive to do it. They have been intimidated by their quote betters unquote. There's a pecking order in Ireland that's really pathetic. and the people have learned that they had better obey the local norms, and the local norms are set by the Anglo-Irish.
Okay, I don't think that's just in Ireland that pecking order exists. Anyway, look, if people are interested in following this and maybe supporting your work, how can they get in touch, Chris?
How can they get in touch with us? Well, they can. Quite a few hundreds, maybe 2,000 people now or more have copies of the book. They're contacting me and they're lending the book to others, and so that's one way of doing it. I had a website up for irishholocaust.org since about over 20 years, I think. It was just taken down last week. It just disappeared. I don't know why. It's just one of those mysteries I don't understand. It was up and it was doing fine work, and I thought it didn't complete the job of silencing the famine writing industry, and that's why I wrote the book, and I'm hoping that the book will do what the pamphlet and the website did not quite accomplish, didn't quite manage it. But
so can you just tell us where we can get copies of the book? You were looking up some details, phone number and email.
Here's the email address: John Robinson, all one word, at IRCOM, that's EIRCOM.com. John Robinson at IRCOM.com. And he'll send you whoever's interested in the book. I donated all the books printed in Ireland. I've donated to a group who are doing some pretty good work. They're trying to get the Irish people to understand that there was a free Irish government that was set up after the 1918 elections by the elected officials, and they founded the Eire on January 21, 1919, after the 1918 elections. But King George V declared it an illegal assembly and set about imprisoning and shooting the elected members of the government. And then on December 6, 1921, the British government imposed its own government on Ireland. And all subsequent governments of Ireland have been successors to the one that was imposed by Churchill and King George V. So it's sort of a sad story. That explains a lot. There's an awful lot about Ireland that I found hard to understand. When living here in Chicago, where I am, I was up from South America, and I asked our Irish Consul General, shouldn't we be doing something about the Birmingham Six, that they had been tortured into confessing to a bombing in Birmingham, and they were obviously innocent, and that should we be doing something for them? He said, oh no, terrorism. So we didn't do anything, and then nearly 10 years later, we got interested again. We would no longer pay any attention to him, and we played a small role in freeing them. By locking up those Birmingham Six, the British government kept the actual killers, the actual bombers, at large. You wonder why they would do that. But that's what happened to them and the Guildford Four. There was a film made of the Guildford Four, In the Name of the Father, same kind of thing. But there's a simpler one that has not been exposed at all yet, and that is the August 15th, 1998 bombing by MI5 and the Chicago FBI agent, along with a lifelong criminal, who moved from Chicago to Ireland in 1994 and remained there until mission accomplished for MI5. And that was the bombing murder of 29 people in Omagh, County Tyrone. It was an IRA bomb, but the bomb car was owned by an Irish government agent, and they were all working with the Chicago FBI and MI5, and they managed to turn that IRA bomb into an atrocity. There had been 5 previous IRA bombs in which nobody at all got hurt, but there was property damage done, for which the British government, the Exchequer, was paying. So with the help of MI5 and the Chicago FBI, they managed to turn that into an atrocity, and that defeated the IRA. The British Army did not defeat the IRA, but MI5 and the Chicago FBI did. They defeated the FBI. The Good Friday Agreement was driven home, which surrendered the 6 disputed counties to the British government. It is now an undisputed British province, and that's ended that. So it's pretty much the same conditions continue in the 6 counties for the native Irish, kind of difficult living there.
Interesting take on the Good Friday Agreement. Anyway, okay, Chris, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
You're listening to dialectradio.co.uk, your local community radio run by volunteers. Log on to our website at dialectradio.co.uk to find out more.